Welcome back, everybody, to Toronto Today here on the Parlay. I'm your host, Luca Rosano, alongside my co-host, Michael Singh, and we are back to break down a lot of winning that has been coming from Toronto teams. Yes, right now the Leafs and the Raptors are on heaters, both on 6-game winning streaks. We're going to get into our best bet of the night as well, as Mike and I are coming off a win. First, let's get into it, though, Mike. We talked about how big of a game was going to be between the Leafs and the Hurricanes. The Leafs win a thriller 4-3 in overtime. They've won 6 in a row, 2 goals for Matthews, 2 goals for Mitch Marner. He's been upping his game. And the Leafs right now, they are looking very, very good. And for the first time in history, the Leafs and the Raptors each have 6-game winning streaks at the same time. What a time to be a Toronto sports fan.
What a time to be a Toronto sports fan. And both those games heading into both those matchups last night, they both felt like playoff games. It was two of the biggest games of the season for both the Raptors and the Leafs. And as you mentioned, what a time to be a Toronto sports fan. Like, here we are talking about 2 wins. And I don't know if we're accustomed to this as a Toronto sports fans. And, all this talk about the regular season, I mean, does it really mean anything? I think it does, man. Like, I really do think that the way that they're playing right now will help translate into some confidence come the postseason. But just circling back a little bit back to last night, the Leafs showed heart once again. I mean, that Carolina team, they're really good. We talked about all the numbers on yesterday's show as to why they're going to be a tough test, why we're probably leaning Carolina, honestly, heading into that one, because the odds were a little bit favored towards them. But the Leafs found a way. Obviously, Mitch Marner with the game tying goal and the overtime winner. Austin Matthews had a pair of goals. It was all around great for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The one blemish on the evening, Luca, of course, was Austin Matthews. And his status is up in the air right now after he took a knee to the head.
Yeah.
And my first thought when watching that is, okay, first, I hope he's okay, because he's like the most important player to the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course. Franchise center, franchise player, the face of the franchise, whatever you want to call it. Second, how does this impact his Rocket Richard race chances? Those who were listening to us and telling us, and we were telling them put money on Matthews. I don't know anymore. If he's out for a prolonged period of time, the race might just get away from him. So this is things that you just can't really factor in. It just happens. And that's the name of the game when it comes to sports betting. But overall, Leafs found a way to still win, even though Matthews went down late in that third period. And I think just a positive takeaway from that game, because they showed they can hang with anyone in this league.
Yeah, it was a solid win against a very good opponent. Let's talk about Mitch Marner. He's been tearing it up lately. 10 goals and 19 points in his last 8 games. I think he's starting to live up to that giant contract. And it's funny, I know a lot of Leafs fans were torn on him, some even suggesting the Leafs should try to trade him. This was at the beginning of the season, but now he's really coming into his own as an elite player on this team and an important part of this team. So what has your reaction been to Mitch Marner being on his own personal heater? And do you think he's finally starting to live up to that contract?
Well, man, I'm a huge Mitch Marner fan. Even after the playoffs last season, I remember a conversation I was having with some buddies, and they were both kind of heated after watching Marner in that playoff series. He objectively he had a bad playoff series, and they were like, "Yeah, we need to trade this guy. He's not built for the playoffs. He's not worth his $10.9 million contract. We got to capitalize on his value." And I'm like, guys, he's just 23 years old. Now he's 24.
Crazy.
He's scratching the surface of what he's going to be as a hockey player. And when he signed that $10.9 million contract, 6-year deal, he wasn't supposed to be worth $10.9 million the first 2 years of that contract. It's years 3, 4, 5, 6 where really you start to see that value. And there's no way we can deny that we're seeing that value right now. He is the hottest player in the National Hockey League. He actually leads the NHL in scoring since returning from injury on January 15th. And he's now scored in 8 straight games. This is a guy who wasn't a primary goal scorer. This is a setup guy, but he's found a way to score in 8 straight games. Only Jaromir Jagr and Teemu Selanne have longer goal scoring streaks than the Maple Leafs forward right now since 1993. That's a remarkable stat and remarkable company that Mitch Marner is in. And that's the type of player I think he was. And Now, we talk about his goal scoring and his assisting and his point production and the way he can drive a line on his own, but I also love this guy on the penalty kill. Like, how often do you see a $10.9 million forward being so crucial to a penalty kill? The Leafs right now have the third best penalty kill in the National Hockey League, and Mitch Marner is so important to that. He is a huge reason why the Leafs get a lot of shorthanded chances. I mean, he reads the game very well. He's in passing lanes. He's smart about it. He honestly does it all. And for someone his size as well, that's not, you don't come around that very often. So Mitch Marner, I think, is definitely living up to his $10.9 million contract if he maintains this pace offensively. But he's also getting some value or bringing some value defensively as well.
Yeah, Marner's now scored in 8 straight games. Only Yarmer Yager and Timu Solani have longer goal scoring streaks. Yager 9, Solani had 11. So we'll see if Marner can break this. And with the way he's been playing, I would not be surprised if that happens. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Siakam situation. A lot of Raptors fans were calling for his head, saying, "Let's get this guy out of town. Let's trade him." And now we're seeing how well he's playing. And look, when you get it going, fans can't say anything. And right now, just like what Siakam's doing to fellow Raptors fans, including myself, he's shutting up those naysayers
Yeah.
and those non-believers who didn't think it was possible for him to have this type of run, especially when he came back from injury. It's been a remarkable turnaround since January 15th. So yeah, the Leafs keep it going. They're going to try to go for their 7th straight win. And speaking of teams looking for their 7th straight win, how about the Toronto Raptors, Mike? I mean, what more can you say about this team? Let's first start with the fact that they did open as an underdog, and we're looking at it like, are these odds makers out of their mind? But that quickly turned into the Raptors being a slight favorite. But even looking at that line, it was an absolute steal. What was it, 1.5, 2 maybe? And the Raptors, they were in complete control throughout that entire game against the Hornets. The Hornets made their runs, but I am so impressed with this team's resiliency. We've seen it now over the last week. Every time the other team makes their run, whether it be in, closing out the first half or in the third quarter, the Raptors have done a great job of holding on to that lead, whether it's a Gary Trent Jr. 3, whether it's Van Vliet making a play when he needs to, whether it's Siakam doing his thing in the paint. The Raptors, they continue to withstand these punches thrown by their opposition, and this team keeps winning games. Now they join a pretty good list of the Warriors, Suns, Bucks, Jazz, Hawks, and Sixers to have multiple 6-game winning streaks. Pascal Siakam, he was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and many people felt he was an all-star snub. And then what does he do, Mike? He goes up against the guy who was named to the All-Star team in LaMelo Ball and outplayed him. I mean, Siakam went off in this game, not to mention Van Vliet chipped in, and Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr. When this team clicks, they are fun to watch, and it's amazing how this Raptors team has everybody talking right now, and they got people talking about this team looking legit. And if this team can snag a big get in a couple days, or if not today, because crazy trades are happening left, right, and center in the NBA, the Raptors could very well make a run. And honestly, I'm not going to deny that this team can't win the East with the way they're playing. And if they go out and get a big name, I mean, I see Miles Turner potentially being in trade discussions. And we know Masai, if he can somehow pull that off, this team is looking very dangerous right now. And it's just good for the fan base to see this type of success for the Raptors.
Well, yeah, Miles Turner, Nurkic, some big names being thrown around with the Raptors right now, but it's because of the way that they're playing. And you look at last night, as you mentioned there, Luca, this team jumped out to a 22-point lead in the first half. Like, it wasn't even close. Of course, Charlotte clawed back. I think they drew it within 3 in the third quarter. But then the Raptors held off. And we think back to about 2 weeks ago when we were on the show frustrated because the Raptors were in so many close games in a row. They didn't find ways to win those games, but they've turned that corner. I think we talked about it a little bit, that there was a lot of learning lessons that this team, a lot of lessons that this team had to learn in terms of how to win tight games. And that's what they're doing right now. Like, whenever a team kind of gets close, the Raptors find a way. And again, it's finding a way by committee. The Raptors had 4 20-plus point scorers for Charlotte last night. Siakam, Gary Trent, Fred VanVleet, and OG Anunoby combined for 88 points on 33 of 63 from the floor, 14 from 31 from beyond the arc. And actually, tonight marks the fourth time this season where the Raptors have had more than four 20-point scorers. This has never happened more than twice in a single season prior to this season. So this Raptors team is built differently. Like we keep mentioning, it's by committee. If Siakam's not going one night, then someone else is going to pick him up, whether that's a Scotty Barnes, a OG Anunoby, the way Gary Trent's playing, and of course Fred Van Vliet. Like at least two of those guys are going to be clicking every single night, and that's what makes this team so dangerous. Is that okay, you double Siakam, right? But he's going to find an open Gary Trent or Fred Van Vliet or OG Anunoby. Scotty Barnes has even come around and started hitting the three. Like those guys, you can't leave open on the perimeter because they're making you pay right now. And I think that was such a big. I want to give credit to Nick Nurse because I think a big difference with this Raptors team is pushing Scotty Barnes to shoot the three ball more and turning him into that kind of asset there from beyond the arc because he spaces out the floor so much more. And if he's willing to pull the trigger there on the three, yeah, sure, you're gonna miss some, but eventually, like you're young, man. You're gonna start making those shots, as you mentioned a couple of weeks ago. His form is starting to look a lot better, and he's more confident now shooting that three ball, which makes your whole offense more dangerous. And you throw in the play of Chris Boucher and Precious off the bench. Kem Birch is even, he's struggling to get minutes because everyone else is playing so well. It's a good time right now to be a Raptors fan. And if you can go out and add a complementary piece to this mix, I don't want a piece that jumbles it up too much because right now what's happening is so good, so nice. But if you can add a piece that complements them, perhaps bring some presence inside, like a Miles Turner or Nurkic, then we could legitimately be talking about the Raptors as serious threats here in the Eastern Conference. And I think we already are at that point.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if come 2 weeks time they're within a couple games of the first place.
Yeah, we talk about how wide open it is. If they continue this type of play, I really don't see them slowing down. We're going to see now how they fare against weaker competition. That's always been kind of the thorn in their side, losing some very suspect games, obviously against the Blazers, who have completely ripped apart their team, and the Pistons as well. So we'll see how they fare against teams like the Thunder and Rockets this week. But I really don't see this team taking a step back. I only see this team getting better and moving on up. And all eyes are going to be at the trade deadline. What does Masai Ujiri do? Even if Masai doesn't swing for the fences and gets a Miles Turner, and he can and rather goes out and gets a Gallinari, who's another name linked to the Raptors, I think that's a-okay for this team. I would actually really like that, where if the Raptors can't go get that big center, even if they could get a complimentary piece from off the bench, like a Gallo, like another guy who can stretch the floor, hit the three, hit the J, that's going to be big for this team, because we do see that's the one area that's been hindering this team. It's not necessarily the bigs. They've been managing their own on the glass. It's been that bench production. It's been when the starters need to take a rest, the other team usually makes that run. So if they can add at the very least one bench piece that can at least shoot the basketball, I think that's going to be a win for Masai. We all know at this point he's going to be trying his hardest to get rid of Goran Dragic. I did say we could potentially see Chris Boucher and Flynn in the past get traded. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I think we're going to be looking at Goran Dragic with a first attached to his name. What is that going to get the Raptors? And we'll see. It could be a big get. Maybe Indiana's desperate. They want to just blow that thing up and they take future assets. They value that, an expiring contract. Or we'll see if Masai can at least turn that into a guy like Gallo or even some other names that are on the market. You mentioned Nurkic. That's going to be a big one too. You look at what the Blazers are doing. They don't really care what they're getting back in terms of talent for now. They care about expiring deals and future picks. So that could be a team the Raptors could swing a deal with. And it would be the second straight year the Raptors and the Blazers trade with one another.
That could be the case. As you mentioned, the Blazers are not getting very much, but maybe they've learned because they got fleeced from Masai. I mean, that Norman Powell trade. I mean, let's call it like it is. They got
Yeah.
absolutely fleeced there for Gary Trent Jr. And yeah, man, like I didn't think at this point in the season in February, second week of February, we're talking about the Raptors as potentially one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and for them to, hey, they're what, 3.5 games back of the Philadelphia 76ers, and that's the closest they're to in the Atlantic Division. They could eventually surpass Philly there and perhaps add another banner to their resume. They're
Yeah,
winning
they're
that
not
Atlantic
far off.
Division. They're not that far off, which is I didn't think we'd be talking about that, especially when you have Brooklyn and of course the 76ers, you have Boston in there. A lot of good teams that were supposed to be better than the Raptors prior to the start of the season, and they continued to turn heads, and that's why they've been such a great value bet. I still can't believe what the heck Vegas was thinking last night in starting the Raptors off as dogs against Charlotte. And if you bet on them last night, you're very happy like I am.
Yeah, I'm looking at the standings, and I don't want to big up a Raptors division rival, but I just find it interesting. At the same time as the Raptors are peaking, there's another team that is an interesting bet, if you will, below the Raptors, and that's the Boston Celtics. They've been on the come up. They've won 5 in a row, and they're starting to look good too. Are they going to be aggressive at the deadline? There's been some rumors revolving them. So I look at the Raptors and the Celtics. Those are two teams that many people probably didn't think as a dangerous team, as two teams that can make some noise in the second half of the season. So we'll see what happens. But the Raptors continue to get it done, and they do have an easier week this week after going through an onslaught of tough opponents. So we'll see how the Raps respond as they're making everybody a believer in them right now. Okay, let's get to our best bet of the night. Mike is 12-10. I'm 15-7. Mike, let's pick some winners here.
Yeah, for sure. I think we both won last night, and I'm going back and forth right now on my pick, but I'm just gonna go with my gut, and I'm looking at the Phoenix Suns against the Philadelphia 76ers. The Suns come into this game as 1 point dogs on the road, of course, in Philadelphia. And these are two of teams in the NBA that are playing some of the best basketball right now. Joel Embiid is playing like an absolute machine. Chris Paul is playing like he's 25 years old. Devin Booker went off for 38 points last night. I know Phoenix is coming off the second night of a back-to-back, but I'm actually going to take Phoenix to cover that 1 point spread. They've won 13 of their last 14 games. The 76ers, meanwhile, they're 7-3 in their last 10, but they've lost to some good teams, including, the Dallas Mavericks not too long ago, where I bet on Philly and I was wrong about that. So I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns tonight. They're the number one team in the NBA, and let's see if they can continue to, I guess, assert that.
Yeah, no, I do like that. You're getting Phoenix at one. You have to take them considering how good of a bet they've been, and they've proven they can win at home and on the road. And I know Philadelphia is a good home team, but I could see Phoenix winning that game. A lot of good games tonight in the NBA. That's going to be I believe, the first game of the doubleheader or a showcase game, but another game that's going to be really good, and it's going to be on TNT. It's a game that I'm going to be taking. Give me the Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks, Lakers, going to be a big time showdown. Bucks only favorite here by 3.5. I think they're going to trounce the Lakers here. I'm not giving the Lakers any sort of shot in this one. They almost blew it against the lowly Knicks on Saturday. It had to take a very good effort in overtime to put the Knicks away. And I mean, the Lakers were up big in that game, and they allowed for the Knicks to come back. They're going to be taking on a different team, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. And I know the Bucks haven't been the strongest bet against the spread if you look at their numbers, but I think that's more about them being unmotivated versus their actual talent on the team. I think when this team goes up against strong opponents, they show up. They want to flex their muscles. Giannis is ready to go off. So I think Giannis going up against the King, the Bucks going to LA to play the Lakers, a game that everybody's going to be watching. I think the Bucks are going to show up big here. So yeah, I'll lay those 3.5 points. I think this could be a game where the Bucks win by double figures.
Yeah, and I guess the only caveat to that would be LeBron James and Anthony Davis are both probable for tonight, but even when they're in the lineup, that Lakers team hasn't been working. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity for the Lakers to make a statement at home against the defending NBA champions. But anytime you bet on the Lakers, at least in my experience and Luca, your experience, we haven't been proven right. So if we're betting against the Lakers, man, I'm all for it. I'm with you. I'll expect the Bucks to cover that spread tonight.
Well, we do have a full slate of NBA games, and just a program, Mike will be joining me on 3 point lines later on today, as we will be making our full picks against the spread for all these games. So definitely stay tuned for that. But that is going to wrap up Toronto today here on the Parlay. Thank you so much for watching. You can catch this podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can follow us on social media at the Parlay, and Mike and I will be back tomorrow breaking down Toronto sports and more. Thanks for watching.